Hello, friends of Herbie, and welcome to this new episode of Campfire Talks with Herbie. As you know, the format here is that we will have a guest, and tonight we have a very special guest. And I will interview the guest to have an idea of what his background is and why he discovered TameFlow and what he wants to do with TameFlow and so on. And then I will accept one or two questions from the guest and try to answering them to the best of my capacity. And after that, we will interact with the audience. If you are listening or viewing this on YouTube, you can ask questions through the comment box, and I will receive those comments here. Um, so, with no further ado, let's see who's here tonight. It is Daniel Gagnon, not Daniel Dwaron, as you might expect, but Gagnon. And Daniel is where? In Canada, right?
Hello, Steve. Yes, Montreal, Quebec, Canada.
Yeah, welcome to the show, Daniel. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yes,
I
thanks
know
for having me.
you have tons of experience to tell us about and contribute. So, what company are you working with, and no, who are you?
Yeah, well, that's quite the question. Where to begin? Where to break it down? Well, on a personal level, I'm a father of four, but all of our children are in their 20s now. So I think we've achieved our goal of making them citizens that will leave the planet a better place than they found it. That's what we always set out to do with our children. So success on that front. So that's on a personal level. Um, and Professionally, I've been actually been working full time for let me see, over 3 decades now. So yes, that puts me on the downward part of the slope between 50 and 60 years of age. But it's a nice time in life. It's a time for reflection and introspection and decide what lies ahead. So
Yeah.
basically, I'm currently running my own consultancy, my own agile training, advisory, and consulting business. It's been about 3.5 years, I guess, at this point. Um,
So, how did you get involved with agile and organization performance, and then, of course, TameFlow?
it's those 3.5 decades. So yeah, those three decades and change. Actually, the funny thing, Steve, is I'm watching you here with your virtual broadcast studio, and all it is one little piece of software over the web. I remember the first 10 years of my career were in television, and to do what you're doing now required 15 people and millions of dollars of equipment. So, so the fact that you're doing it from your office in Malta, with professional looking graphics, and you even got crawls and so on, and what we used to call superimpositions of text and so on. It is quite impressive. Things have come a long way. So yes, 10 years in television, I ended up as a graphic broadcast designer and as a partner in a post-production facility. Moved from there
You
to
see how things are funny here. Now, I started out in software, and now look at me. I'm like a video TV producer.
there you go. You're sort of passing,
Right.
huh?
Okay, so you started off in another industry there with broadcasting, and then what
Yes.
happened?
Thank you. Yes, my flow is interrupted. The old brain has to has to get back on track. Yeah, wound up in CD-ROMs and the first websites, and basically when by the time I had several people working with and for me, I wound up doing project management. I dropped the pen and picked up the spreadsheet, just because out of necessity, and finally became adept at it, good enough at it that I became interested in certifying. So I got my PMP and so on. And this finally brings me to Agile. So after several years of being a PMP and moving into the IT sphere of things as a project manager, One day, I was on assignment. This is 10 years ago. Actually, there's a funny story here. And those who know me, I've recounted it several times. It's a campfire story of my own. So let me regale you with this one. Either regale you or bore you. Hopefully regale you. One day, about 10 years ago, I was at a client's large insurer here in Canada. I was a project manager for one project, and the team sitting next to me had this annoying habit of getting up at 9:30 every morning and starting to talk and laugh and make jokes with each other. And to me, they were having way too much fun for there to be any possibility on earth that they were getting any productive work done.
They couldn't possibly be working.
They couldn't possibly be working. No, this to me was anathema. I was a command and control. I had then become a hardened command and control type of project manager. Um, well, to a certain, I mean, my personality being what it is, I don't think I could ever be really that hard at anything. But man, to make a long story short, I went and complained. I wanted to change seat because I said, I can't sit beside these clowns. I have my important status meeting at that time, and sure enough, they get up, and the other day they had whistles and things going, and plush animals, and enough is enough of this. So that's when I was informed that not only was I not going to be changing seat, but actually they were about to ask me to take over that project as project manager. I said, no, you can't be serious. You can't be serious. I came here to get away from them, and you're actually making me work with them now. Okay, well, at that point, I did like working for that customer, so that client. So I said, okay, I'll try it. Secretly saying to myself, okay, now this at least is an opportunity to make them work and stop this tomfoolery. Anyway, you can well imagine what happened if we're sitting here talking about Agile and TameFlow now. Is that 10 years ago, that team.
Let me guess. They were doing agile.
They were doing Agile, but the thing is, there were many teams doing Agile in that company at that time, but this particular team was set up for success by happenstance. They were a small team on a medium-sized project, and there was a much larger project that was going on that required a lot of management attention. So they flew under the radar and were allowed to evolve their own way of working to a certain extent. In fact, they had become not only empowered, but by benign neglect had achieved agency, if you can wrap your head around that one. So they had full control to an amazing degree, but through also an incredible product owner of what it was they were doing. And I just stumbled into this against my own will. And they, contrarily to also Agile dogma, they welcomed me and made room for me as a project manager. And I immediately got along well with the Scrum Master. We're friends to this day. And we became sort of a dynamic team. And I basically started learning Agile from them and was able, as a project manager, to liaise with the rest of the company, with the rest of the organization, which had very many non-Agile parts. And the Scrum Master was able to take care of team level things. And for a little over 3 years, I was with that family. I still refer to them we were like a family. And it was a sense of related agency. I've never re-experienced that in my career. In fact, never will, because I will never be with a single team again.
So what is so special about being in that state of agency, as you call it?
Agency, as you know, and maybe I'll describe the difference between empowerment and agency for one thing. Empowerment to me, I hate the word. I hate the word because it sounds like something a paternalistic organization doles out with an eyedropper to its teams, all the while holding sort of the threat that it could be taken back at any time. Once you've achieved agency within a system, you are an actor within the system, and you have achieved stakeholder status. and that agency can no longer be revoked because of the importance of your contribution that is seen by all. And that agency feeds upon itself, confidence
Right.
grows. So there's a huge difference between paternalistic empowerment and true agency. And
I
true
think
agency.
Frederick Laloux, in his models of organizational development, actually developed this topic, and he was also very negative to the notion of empowerment, more or less for exactly the same reasons that you mentioned. And I would also subscribe to that. I have my own war story with Borland, and I recognize what you're saying. There was like a sense of another term that I like is like of fellowship, where there is no real leader, but everyone might step up to perform acts of leadership in their specific area of competencies. So respect was built because of competencies and of course of consistently being dependable, reliable, and delivering, getting stuff done.
Exactly. I can give you an example where, for example, as a project manager, I was able to contribute to that agency being upheld. Our architect would willingly do tests with us, with the rest of us, if it came to that's what was needed that day. And I remember, as if it was yesterday, the head of architecture coming to me and saying, "I hear my architect, my resource, right there. I hear my resource is doing tests. If that's the case, I'm going to take him off your project and put him where he'll be doing some architecture." Right there, it's all there: cost accounting, resource utilization,
Yeah.
fake empowerment, uh, all the negatives. And I
So
was
what
able to.
happened after that
Well, it was a very large
learning
organization.
agile in practice?
Yeah. So after we delivered time and time and time and time and time again into production with zero defects, it got noticed. Right, it got noticed, and as the project manager, I became, as did the Scrum Master. Both myself and the Scrum Master were recruited by corporate, so to speak, to try and recreate what had been achieved by that team, to try and replicate it across the enterprise. And I wound up basically first in as a role of basically running the IT PMO for that area of the bank. And then
So this
finally,
was a banking environment, yeah?
yes, it was a large financial institution.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, also moving very rapidly to the center, to the corporate PMO Center of Excellence, where I contributed to basically establishing the methodology, the ways of working that would enable agility at the corporate scale, but was never able to. The farther I moved away from the accomplishments of that team, and the farther I moved, the more obviously, I ran into the inertia of the rest of the organization, and that got me on my soapbox of preaching the necessity of organizational agility. So what we achieved was exceptional because we were able to collaborate, and we were left alone. We were so low under the radar that we actually were able to circumvent or work with or basically get along with the corporate control towers very quickly without there being much friction. But as soon as we
corporate control towers, I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then eventually you came across this thing which is disciplined agile. How did that happen?
Yeah, so Disciplined Agile I came about when basically I met Scott Ambler and Mark Lyons at a conference, and it was in Orlando in 2014. I just walked up to them and I basically said to them, I could be doing waterfall and still be completely respectful of the tenets of disciplined agile. And they sort of looked at me. So, and then I explained my reading of it was that disciplined agile is basically, it is not, it's not a method, it's not a methodology, it's not a framework. It's an overarching meta synthesis of everything that can, will, and would and could be done at the practice level, but also at the objective level in terms of delivering value, be it products, be it software, be it services. And it's completely respectful and mindful of the fact that, we've been delivering value, businesses have been delivering value to customers for a very long time. And that not everything is a user story, and not everything, not every team needs to do stand-ups and so on. So Disciplined Agile basically says, well, here are your options. There's hundreds and hundreds of options, and you have to choose your way of working, but that takes a certain amount of time and effort. And actually, you in chapter 21 in the book, you introduced me, gave a name to what Disciplined Agile does for the first time. In my mind, it's what you refer to as Alexandrian Patterns. So there is in every context there is a specific solution to a specific problem. And there's an emergent property to these Alexandrian patterns or choices, in that each choice we make changes the environment we're in, changes the ecosystem, so that the next choices are influenced by the previous ones. So it's a very fascinating.
I'm glad to hear that. That's I'm giving a name to something that you're actually doing there in DA. That's
yes,
funny.
Exactly.
Okay, so now that you mentioned the book, how did you discover TameFlow?
So I'm an avid reader. This is not a Zoom background. This is part of my library at home, basically. I try to get through. My usual aim is about 100 books a year, but depending on circumstances and other activities in my life. So I read your first book, the hyperproductive, the hyperproductive one with Wolfram.
I just call it the hyperbook.
The hyperbook, okay.
Yeah.
So I read the hyperbook around 2018, and I was like, wow, it was very, very, very thought-provoking, and I loved it because it challenged it gave me even more patterns and more choices, and it started to influence the way I interacted with teams also, because when I was doing DA type pattern choices and so on, just being exposed to some of the ideas in the hyperbook changed my perception, opened the doors of perception, in the words of Aldous Huxley. From there, I met Daniel, who's a fellow Montrealer, and wound up taking his classes, and wound up also taking train-the-trainer classes with him. I drive him up the wall because I keep telling him I'm not quite ready to give full-on TameFlow classes yet, because I lack the experience of certain aspects, specifically on the accounting side. And his take is, this is science, you don't need the experience.
Yeah, Daniel
he's probably
good
listening.
at jumping to conclusions, and
I know he's probably listening, that's why I'm mentioning it.
He is, and maybe he will hop on.
But actually,
here.
it's some of the questions I have for you later on today is particularly around that.
Yeah.
So yes.
Let's see. Since you mentioned Daniel, let's see who we have here tonight.
Yeah, sure.
Of course, the first one. Guess who that is?
Yeah, of course.
The man, Daniel Baron. And then we have Rudiger, another regular. Hi, Rudiger. Yep. Oh, we have Pepin for the first time. I see him here. Hello from Twello, the Netherlands. Welcome. We have Anna Sikorska.
Hello, Anna. Yeah.
Yes, and Nick. Nick is also often here. Hello, Nick. Mario, who was on the show a few days ago, also from Montreal.
Montreal as well.
Sri, who was here yesterday. Welcome back. Daniel didn't like our comments. Okay. We'll let him in later, right? And then we have Veronique Malfant.
Good friend of
tuned
mine
in from Montreal.
as well.
Montreal is becoming like the capital of TameFlow here. So. Well, welcome, Veronique. Okay, so going on. Of course, you've been making a living out of this, and you just mentioned that you started to sneak in TameFlow into or TameFlow like affected your way of working. But
Hmm.
how do you see how important will it be like professionally for you going forward?
I think going forward, the idea is, especially in the new book and the rabbit hole of theory of constraints it sent me down. I've been listening to all these broadcasts, and of course now I'm reading The Choice by Ellie Goldratt and the dialogue with his daughter there. Um, so definitely, I think that the as an overall system, I uh, cannot help but be influenced, uh, and it's going to affect my thought processes. I'll give you one example and this has been for a while now. One of the reasons I removed the word agile coach from my LinkedIn profile and decided to go more with organizational agility advisor. For one thing, I took actual ICF coaching program a while back in late 2019 and realized coaching is a profession. But beyond that, uh, the expression agile coach is very much, to my mind, connected to Scrum Masters and to coaches who come in and recommend or uphold methodologies and so on. But it has nothing to do with coaching. It's basically process mentoring. It's process facilitation on the one hand. Second of all, it's mostly in the IT sphere. The constraint Herbie has not been seen in IT for many, many years. Herbie has long since moved on. He's moved on to the business. He's moved on to as I like to call them, the corporate control tower. So governance, compliance, risk, the PMO, privacy, security, the actual business ideation, you name it.
Yeah,
Herbie Herbie has not been. They don't even. No, Herbie is completely absent from IT now. And as you illustrate in the book, trying to improve that even if you were to double your speed using agile approaches in the IT sphere, in the overall value stream, you're maybe getting a 2, 3, 4% gain. So a simple value stream analysis will show you that. And the theory of constraints will tell you, look for Herbie. Stop throwing resources on non-Herbie areas of of the system. So
yeah. I
that's
think that with the throughput accounting stuff connected with the patterns and everything we're doing, we can address many of these um, problems which are beyond the sphere or the span of IT and the greatest constraint of all is of course the mental models which are good because they allow you to make quick decisions, but they also become like a straight jacket that keep you there where you are and you can't go and evolve beyond. So that is somehow what is inspiring this TameFlow approach, which is primarily based on patterns, which then are translated into mental models. And it's the mental models you're teaching, but behind the mental models we have all the pattern thinking. We have also here Jersey from Poland, and of course we have a comment. Wait, this one from Anna. The shortest description of TameFlow
you're either.
community. They are either from Montreal or they are Polish. I am both. Okay,
That's right. You're
a
the
force of nature.
Yeah, Anna. You're the perfect tame flow archetype.
Absolutely. We have Rudiger. I struggle with the same issue. Agile coach, I find that is still what potential clients are looking for. Yeah, and of course, there is a demand that has been created in the industry. So I think that we will see that demand for quite a while. Um, but I also see this as an opportunity because many agile coaches are running into these corporate control towers, as you call them, and
And they're
maybe
just
they
not
stop.
equipped.
They are not equipped.
They're,
They don't know what
they're
to
just not
do.
equipped to
So
handle it. That's right.
yeah.
And
So we can give them the right kind of mindset, mind frame, and mental
mhm.
models and tools to engage like with that kind of audience rather than with the engineering teams. So yes,
I just
Rudiger, that was a good
while
observation.
we're on the subject of semantic diffusion, another term I love from Martin Fowler, when something starts to lose its sense, uh, business agility. I really dislike that, and I also dislike enterprise agility. Not everything is a business. Some of my clients are governments, some of my clients are power public. Uh, you know, so not everything is a
Yeah,
business.
yeah, it's
Not everything is an enterprise.
of course.
Yeah.
But
So
it's a buzzword driven world, so oftentimes
yeah,
I will also use those terms because that's what people want to
yeah.
hear. And if you
You
want
have
to
to be
have their
buzzword
attention,
compliant.
I'm buzzword compliant sometimes, not always, when it's necessary.
Yes.
Um, so it might be necessary, but it's not sufficient, as Gordon says. So we have uh, Daniel telling us that these five major corporations are using TameFlow in Montreal. Wow, well done, Daniel. And then we have Doug popping in here. Uh, Eamon, Damon, and Rudiger, while I totally disagree with Scrum's approach, I recently got Scrum certified as it was the only way to get my resume seen. Yeah, that's also
Oh yeah. No,
a sad state of affair with
I've
all
got
the.
something like 47 names after 47 letters after my name, and Doug. I've I do the same thing. Obviously, I'm buzzword. I'm acronym compliant.
Your acronym, so we can
Yeah,
be buzzword and we can be acronym compliant. That's
that's
a
right.
great discovery. Doug goes on to say, I would never teach it unless there were many dollars involved. I do have a price. Yes, I understand you.
$1 billion.
$1 billion to get the Scrum Master certification.
Yeah.
Okay, but Daniel, tell us something more about your typical day in life.
These days, I get up as late as I can because I've drifted into that with COVID. I was never a morning person, so the 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 lack of structure of confinement has definitely continued my love affair with sleep, and I have no shame in admitting it. I was uh, I was watching one of these, and Tom Cagley like blew my mind. The man gets up at 3:30 or 4 a.m.
Yeah.
to jog 10 miles. Here's my exercise. This house is in North American split level, so think four sort of half stories. There's a lot of stairs, and I have a bad memory, so I'm constantly forgetting either glasses or my phone or my wallet or my a pen. So I spend a lot of time in those stairs. Tom, that's my exercise, up and down the stairs.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a new form of equipment
A
to
stairmaster, right?
excel, right?
So I'm a stairmaster. But other than that, all just aside. Um, Although COVID took care of my excess work in process to a certain extent, because
Yeah.
a couple of client assignments sort of just petered out. Um, Basically, back to full days. Half days, I would suppose, would be billable time to clients. The rest is intense research, development, continuous self improvement, um, and in the evenings and so on, I love to read, mostly literature. And I get enough of the agile stuff. I've read literally hundreds of books in the agile lean sphere. So I'm getting less and less out of each new read. So I tend to keep that for the day, and my evenings are for literature.
And what makes you happy at the end of that day?
I have a twist. We all we all say making a difference, and I agree with that. But what makes me especially happy is if I feel I've made a difference in a way that I don't have to make a difference that way again.
Hmm.
Let me explain. It means that well, as I suppose as an aspiring true coach and or aspiring professional coach, I have led my customer to the realization themselves, and with their own, led them to think for themselves, so they no longer need me for that specific topic or that specific type of question, and we can move on to other things. So I've made a difference, but in a way that doesn't need to be. I don't need to make that difference again with that client.
And in this long career in this industry, what important skills or insight have you gained?
Sort of following up on what I just said, my first day on the job is when I start looking through the exit from that mandate. Again, the true professional in this sphere of ours should always be looking for maximum impact with minimal involvement, and putting all the onus on the client, on the mentee, on the coachee to work it out for themselves. And we are there to accompany, we are there to aid, but under no circumstance, for example, should we be doing drive-by process imposition. Right?
Right. And looking forward, what challenges do you see coming to this industry that always wants to help companies to improve and improve? And of course, where do you see TameFlow going forward?
The good news is that the methodology wars are over. The bad news is that the methodology wars are over. So what I'm finding is, moving into company after company, enterprise after enterprise, organization after organization, it's very rare that you see a very, very firmly entrenched sort of old-fashioned approach anymore. I mean, that's especially now, with what's going on in the world. And when it comes to software development, for example, if there is some waterfall still going on in an organization, that's usually because there's a very good reason. And if you look at the Stacy model, for example, then there's probably some waterfall being done that is in the lower left-hand side of the quadrant. It makes perfect sense. And common sense and disciplined agile and whatever will tell you, the Stacy model, just if it's low volatility requirements with technology that's well controlled, and you've been doing it waterfall for 15 years and you're consistently delivering what you need to be delivered, why would you change that? Why would you impose the change tax? But the methodology wars, Agile has won the methodology wars, but there is no such thing as Agile. There are 100 competing schisms of the same religion, and there are many, as I like the word, fundamentalists. There's a lot of dogma out there. I like to call them, unfortunately, agilistas.
Yes, there are a lot of tribes
sort of
in this space.
yes, from a play on what Nassim Taleb calls fragilistas. So
Uh-huh.
a lot of agilistas out there who haven't gotten the memo that agnosticism is the way to go. And unfortunately, there are many methodologies that are minting, constantly just churning out people who have had a certain number of days of training and who are now all of a sudden can train others, and just rinse and repeat this
Yeah, while you're
endless
touching on
trope.
this topic, can you give us a very very brief insight into how DA goes about with the certifications?
Yeah, the difference in DA is that at the current time there are two exams. One is for the Disciplined Agile being Scrum Master or practitioner, and the other is for coaches. In both cases, except for the very lowest certification, you need to prove between 2 and 5 years of experience with a basically full set of references. You need to submit a file basically with exactly what you worked on in those 2 to 5 years, who it was for. Give me that customer's client's name. They will be called, and you need to you can't just walk out of a DA class and say I am now a DALSM. You need to go through that hurdle. So you need to have your
Yeah.
experience verified.
Okay. And back to what we were talking about, where is TameFlow in the future of this industry from your perspective?
I think that TameFlow is a set of very, very strong antidotes to what ails this industry and what ails our client industries. Uh, the patients need to be aware of what they're being administered, and our job as as TameFlow trainers and TameFlow practitioners moving forward, I think, is to create an awareness and understanding of how these ideas are different and how they are not radical. They are based on absolute common sense and
Mm-hmm.
the inherent simplicity of the theory of constraints, for example, and Dr. Goldrat's work, goes back decades and decades. So does throughput accounting, for that matter. But it's been forgotten. It's been, TameFlow to a certain extent is only proposing things that have been known for a long time, but mixing them together in a way that is very, very effective in a novel way. Combining Kanban with the theory of constraints, for example, and TA is an Alexandrian pattern when, if it's applicable to the context, is completely powerful and speaks to exactly what I was mentioning earlier about, go to where the constraint is, go to where the problem really is, where things really are slowing down, and administer the antidote there.
Yeah.
So
So we're almost reaching the end of this interview, but what rewards have you had from working in this industry, and what would you still expect to receive in the future?
the rewards, I often start off my training sometimes, and I will just pause and take off my glasses for effect, but I do mean it. I say that what gets me up in the morning to do these things is the deep conviction uh, that ultimately my tiny efforts are making the world a better place by making our organizations better places to work. If our organizations are better places to work, people are happier. If they're happier, they're happier at home. They're happier in their relationships, and society is just a better place to live in. And I firmly believe that, because what better lever do we have than to improve the hours where people spend most of their waking hours, most of their time in life? So improving that is the biggest bang for the buck in terms of changing society.
Since you mentioned society, well, we know we have this tiny little TameFlow community,
Hmm.
which I know you are also a member there. Um, and in all of these agile movements and even other schools of thought, the uh, the community part is always important. So what would you like to see from this community of peers, or how would you like it to develop?
I haven't been very active so far for a number of reasons. I intend that to change, obviously, as I move forward. But what I expect to be able to contribute to an active community that is concerned with something that is growing and alive is that it becomes a place. For one thing, it becomes a shoulder to sigh on, not to cry on, but to sigh on. It's the one place where they get you, right? It's like a little family when things aren't going that well and there are challenging moments. But also, it's a place where you can avoid reinventing the wheel. For example, in DA, I configured a whole bunch of deliverables for training, and I made it available to the entire community just so that others wouldn't have to do it. I could have kept it to myself, but why? What would
Right,
purpose that possibly give you?
right.
So that's what communities are for. You give and you give and you give and you take what such as necessary, but a
And if
give to
people want
take ratio of
to,
4-1 is usually what I go for.
okay, if people want to find you on the community, how do they get to you?
It's Daniel underscore Gagnon.
Okay, and other places they find you, you might want to
LinkedIn is the only.
indicate.
You and I were discussing this in the green room. which is television parlance for the lounge in front of the studio. But I don't even have a website. I've since I started off my own business, I started with a full whip the minute I put out my shingle, and things have not stopped. So it's a great problem to have, but the only place I can send folks is to my LinkedIn profile.
Okay. Okay. So we'll make sure to replace that with the TameFlow community profile. It will be more important than LinkedIn, right?
Definitely not.
Okay. So we have some more comments here from Sri again. Redesign is necessary to replace the current agile industrial
Fowler.
complex.
I love it. Yeah.
Hope TameFlow will help to redesign the way organizations need to work. Yes, very, very good point. In the Hyperbook, I used a lot the word reconceive, because redesign gives you the idea of redoing something, but reconceive, I think, is really what we're after, to really rethink what this is about.
I like it.
But Sri, you're getting the right perspective on this. It's something new needs to happen in this whole industry. Then we have Doug. My fear is that the methodology wars are over and that Scrum won, Kanban and TameFlow win based upon merit but not based upon dollars spent in the market. Doug, let's take the challenge and win this war. Okay, Doug.
Rationally Unified Process won too.
Oh yes. Which
everything,
version?
Everything is just a question of time.
Yeah, the new wars may be around the number of certifications one holds.
Then I win.
So,
I've got 50.
Yeah,
I've got
okay,
15.
Hands down. I don't
win.
even have one. Do you know that I don't even hold one certification?
So. Oh, you're unemployable.
I know. That's why I have so much time to invent TameFlow.
That's right.
Okay, so we have Nick. I'm not for dogma as well, but I just can't shake my XP dogma. Oh, is there an XP dogma? That's harsh, because craftsmanship is a good pattern. I also took a long time to get Scrum certified.
I don't think XP was dogmatic, though. Do you?
I don't agree that XP is dogmatic. I think it's pragmatic.
Yes.
It's very much hands-on and focus on getting things done, and in a way, it is methodology agnostic, because you can apply XP in almost all contexts.
But it's been subsumed and eaten alive by Scrum. User stories are from XP, and everybody thinks it's from Scrum, right?
Yes, indeed.
I don't want to make this about about speaking about the pros and cons of any given methodology. Everything fits if it's part of the proper Alexandrian pattern, right?
Yeah, but you're touching upon a thing that I'm also very disturbed about. That historical perspective is important, and preposterous claims or rewriting the history is never a good thing to do. But we are seeing that happening in this industry quite frequently.
Oddly enough, and this is not meant to be in any way, shape, or form an advertisement, but the PMI ACP certification is actually an Agile self-defense course. What it basically is an understanding of the history of the movement. Once you've done your ACP, nobody can pull the wool over your eyes, and you know exactly what came from where.
Okay, so we need to add the history of TameFlow there now.
Yeah, it should be added. it would be at the very end.
But it goes back to the very beginning.
Yeah. But as a package, it's the novelty. It is perceived as novel because the packaging is recent. That's the.
Yeah, I mean it's been under the radar screen for a long time, way too long. But
well, you spent all this time blockchaining islands, Steve.
I spent a lot of time with that. But even before that, between like the mid 90s to when I started working like a management consultant, so beginning of the 2000s, TameFlow was just my thing. It didn't even have the name TameFlow,
That's
of
right.
course, but it was my way of working, and the just the notion of making it into like a method or a product or something to promote on its own right was not on my mind at all. But I think that that might have been good because having my own little secret, I was very successful on the field, fixing all broken Scrum and Kanban teams out there, and was able to, how can we say, keep an independent mind.
Yes.
I was not under the influence of the latest Kool-Aid brand that was being sold that morning. So that's the.
Mango peach.
Oh, is that it? Okay.
Yeah, mango peach.
Okay, 3 is going on here. We can always change the word if we imagine big. Okay. Rudiger, it will
Absolutely.
take 2 years and then Safe will have a TameFlow section. Maybe. But I have been like looking ahead of that. TameFlow is a registered trademark, so they cannot use the name. They might, of course, copy the practices or the ideas, but they won't be able to say we're doing TameFlow. So, okay, Nick, you misunderstood. I don't know what I misunderstood, but okay. It's confusing. Sorry for leading astray.
Yes, you better
Yes, Nick,
apologize.
we're no longer following you.
No.
You need to write a full sentence. Jersey says maybe PMI could buy TameFlow and include TameFlow in its offering. Just joking. Yes, let's keep it as a joke. Jersey, or the other way around. TameFlow could buy PMI. Yes, in the future we'll grow so much that we will do that as well. If we would like to make the inputs into rethinking agile industry, maybe we should find a partner. Well, that's
the thing is,
good point.
there's no economic sense in buying not-for-profit organizations.
Absolutely. So we have to make this profitable first. I mean the PMI. So Doug, I recently gave a Kanban presentation to Atlanta chapter of PMI Agile Forum before I started digging into TameFlow. Hope to carry it to them as well. Yes, why not, Doug? Okay, I mean, we've been talking a lot here,
Yeah, I know.
Daniel. So let's see if we can get me to say something. You have some questions for me, don't you?
I do actually. There's a couple of little objection handling routines that I'd like you to sort of expound upon if you have thought of them, and I'm sure you have. One is around the throughput accounting. Now, take like myself or a Doug or anyone walks into a client and says, we've got this approach based on Kanban, the theory of constraints, and throughput accounting, and would like to run it by you. And the CFO or director there, or someone in finance, immediately goes, "Did you say throughput accounting? That's voodoo economics from the 90s. Get out of here." Or he'll say nothing and go to the CEO. And when the CEO asks what that was about, he'll tell her, "Oh, it was nothing. It was just these guys selling snake oil from the 90s." So how do you get around if I, for one, and here's the thing. I love being, remember my command and control sort of paradigm where I love being in control? What I have retained from that is when I'm training, consulting, advising, or anything, I love to know that I'm in control of the worst possible thing that could happen during the meeting. I love to know that I understand the ins, the outs, the whys, the therefores of what it is I'm proposing and why I'm doing it. At this moment in time, I don't feel that I have that equipment when it comes to duking it out with accountants over throughput accounting. I would be down for the count KO within seconds. So how do I work around that? Because I understand the merit, but how do I get past the fact that I don't have the credibility in the eyes of the accountants to even be bringing this up? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. There are many facets that come into addressing this point. What you mentioned there, that the accountant like refers this to throughput accounting as a, what was it, voodoo something, voodoo
Voodoo
economics
economics.
from the 80s or 90s or whatever, um, uh, is a possible objection that you will find, and it has nothing to do with the validity or non-validity of throughput accounting, but presumably that kind of person has been exposed to, unfortunately, the very aggressive position that Dr. Goldratt took when he was explaining throughput accounting in at that time. No, he said that cost accounting is public enemy number one, and you can imagine how happy the accountants were then. So those that went through that period will remember that, and throughput accounting, the term is literally the red flag for the bull, and probably won't have any chance of success there. But in the meantime, theory of constraint has evolved. In the meantime, there are many other management approaches that have also evolved. So there is, I think, there is more open-mindedness in the world of the accountants. But even so, you will have objections, and here I would say a few things. First of all, if you get that objection, maybe you have revealed the secret too early. Thinking about that short video that I sent out in the newsletter yesterday from Bill Detmer, he said something very wise. That is, sell the benefits of the method. Don't sell the method. So when you're pitching this, try to sell what this brings about. Maybe not without even mentioning throughput accounting. Then if you sell the benefit, people will start to, yeah, but no, how do you get there? It seems impossible. And you start maybe explaining how you get there, again, without mentioning throughput accounting. Then of course you must be very let's say not only well versed in the topics and in the arguments, and you said you don't feel equipped to have a conversation with a CFO on throughput accounting, and I hear what you're saying, and Daniel is preparing new courses specifically to get up to gear with throughput accounting. So hopefully those who take these courses will be able to have a meaningful conversation with accounting professionals. Then I would say, if you are in a room or start working with a company, refine your situational awareness. Now, there was a matrix, I don't remember if it was McKinsey or from where you basically, it's 2 times 2, and on one axis you have supports, does not support, and the other one is understands, does not understand.
Yeah.
So map out the people who are engaging with you, where they are there, and see also what are the power positions, because often someone who might be giving like a snappy reply maybe does not have the power to make a decision. Of course, if it's a CFO, the person has the power, right? But even so, if that person is like in a minority, and you can take lever over the other parts that understands and support, then that's one way to deal about that. But since we are talking about TameFlow, what time is it? Okay, we have a few minutes. This topic is really about sales and negotiations, and TameFlow does have ways to deal with this, or rather, not TameFlow, but theory constraints. So I have let me turn on the screen sharing here. Let's see, is that okay? This was not what I want to show, but that, by the way, is the Thomas Cagley's reread Saturday that he started now. So let us just maybe remind remind everybody that Tom Cagle is doing this reread of books, and he has just started the reread Saturday of Tame Your Workflow. So if you want to go through the book and under the guidance
reading is
of Tom,
overrated.
yeah. So with Tom, you can join in there. You can reread it again many times. So I wanted to screen share because I wanted to go to this old presentation of mine, which is in the sphere of psychological flow, and is about how you approach like the selling of whatever. In our case, it's TameFlow, and we do this with a TOC perspective. So remember yesterday, I don't know if you saw yesterday's episode, but
The only one I haven't seen yet.
oh,
Sorry,
okay.
Sri.
But we ended up with classification of the various logic trees of the thinking processes, and there we had like three groups. One group was what do we want to change? The other group is what do we want to change to, and three was how do we cause the change. That is quite a common classification in Goldratt's thinking, and we see it even here, where we have like disagreement on the problem. It's something that we must overcome, but we focus on the problem. So what is it we want to change? And then we have the solution, what do we want to change to, and then the implementation, how do we cause the change? And in the sales process, you must first like pinpoint what is the problem, what is the constraint of the client, of the customer, of whomever is listening. And if you can't agree on that, there's no point in proposing TameFlow or Scrum or whatever. They are happy with what they have. And likewise, if you have agreed that there is a problem and you want to get to a solution, then how do you get there? So this is quite a common thread you see in Goldratt's thinking, and it's even more fine-grained. Now, maybe my choice of word here does not match entirely what you would find in the works of Goldratt, but the concept is the same. All of these levels of disagreement have further levels within, and that CFO that said this is voodoo economics maybe is very defensive. It's like the black section here at the bottom. I don't think so. That could be a sign that there might be some like sociological or psychological problems there. Maybe the reason for saying so is that that person feels threatened by this new method. Why? Because maybe it might expose things that the others in the company would start blaming on him. So, if throughput accounting is so great, why have you been managing this company with cost accounting for, 15 years when there was this much better alternative? So exactly. We must be very careful of not inducing like this defensive behavior. So before you start proposing things, make sure you pinpoint what is the problem, they really want to solve. The next step there is no problem. No, you don't need to sell us anything. We are fine as we are. Or yes, it is a problem, but it's not our problem. That one is not the problem. We have our own problem. We don't need your solution because you're not solving our problem. And the next step is, yes, it is a problem, but it's out of our span of control. We can't do anything about it. We just have to live with it. So these are all levels that in the thinking processes of TOC are addressed in different ways. And as you progress here, you will find, like even here, groupings of people that support one position or the other. So decide which objection you should address first. Typically, it's the one at the very bottom. So you go from bottom to top. Just like we said at the beginning, it doesn't make sense to propose a solution if you don't agree on the problem. And how do you address this? Well, typically, you resolve a few of them, maybe just by talking and convincing. But when you get to the really nasty ones, you resort to the evaporating cloud, conflict resolution diagram, expose the needs, expose the wants, expose the assumptions, elaborate them, and if they have a shared common goal, which they should because they are all dependent on the one same money stream from the clients, applying this way of thinking, there is no conflict that cannot be resolved. Excuse me. Coughing all. Sorry.
Cloud, yeah, I like that.
So applying the thinking processes, you would be able to come to some sort of resolution. And I will stop here and go back to us. So, what do you think about that?
No, that was very good. Is that shared in the community, or is that presentation, or?
Well, this is an old training that I was delivering like before the blockchain time. So like 5 years ago. Maybe I should make it available. Maybe put it online somehow.
The TameFlow community would be a good place.
Right. Well, I'll think about that one. Yeah. So let's see. Any other comments we have here? What's this? Doug, Steve probably won't agree, but I believe that the throughput accounting should be used to help frontline managers make day-by-day decisions. Absolutely, I agree with that, Doug. Throughput accounting should be used to make any sort of decision, but the frontline typically will resolve, will make decisions which are consistent with throughput accounting decisions if they focus on operational flow. And there is a point in the book where we talk about the full kitting phase or event. That's where business meets tech, and that's where you combine the knowledge that you have on the tech side about the operational flow and the Herbie flow with the finance side, and you try to establish the throughput rate so that you can do the proper prioritization. So more from Doug. While I agree that the higher up the better, but I too am not prepared to fight the accountants either. Managers need help in just making good decisions for their teams, and TP helps. Yes, throughput helps. Yes, that's what I was saying before. At the operational level, remain at the operational level, but start learning about throughput accounting, because then you can justify your choices in a better way when you start to get like the scrutiny of the accountants. But don't worry, because in the meantime, I and Daniel will be working on that front and create more awareness in the accounting professional industry about what we are doing. Doug, when you talk throughput accounting, you need to think like a financial analyst.
No, exactly, Dan.
Yeah, the accountants understand. Absolutely. And you know what? We have a gentleman here, which is Daniel Baron, who is a certified public accountant. So who is more qualified than him to pick this up? And we will make sure that Daniel will work in this direction. And Daniel comes in here, buying an not-for-profit organization like PMI. You okay? I got it. So what are your comments on these reflections by Doug and Jersey?
No, it's good, and it shows that I think it shows that I've touched. I think I touched a nerve with the other members of the community in terms of our not discomfort, but our lack of confidence in our abilities at
Right.
this point in time to take on the accountants. And there's this wonderful cartoon. What it reminds me of, there's this wonderful cartoon by Gary Larson, The Far Side. You see a cowboy and a bison, a buffalo, and the cowboy has a knife, and the bison is standing up as well, and they're about to enter a knife fight, except the bison doesn't have a knife, and all the bisons are around, and one bison yells to the bison in the middle, "He's trying to draw you into his kind of fight. Just trample him, Vinny."
Yes.
So
Perspective.
I'm not gonna. We shouldn't be drawn into the cowboys type of fight.
Right, exactly. Um, yeah, you are raising, an important point, but then I want to offer you like the offer you the rosy glasses, so you can
Oh,
have.
don't get me wrong. I don't mean this as an excuse for inaction or anything. It's
No,
just
no,
that
no. But
we
what
need
I
to.
wanted to say is that this is important because it also shows what great opportunity we have in the sense that like other agile approaches which would perceive TameFlow as a competing force are just not competing. We are changing the playing field. If we think of the late Clayton Christensen's disruptive innovation, you know that the main way of disrupting, and the example of the hard disk drive is the recurring one, is to do something which is of lower quality but is on a faster development trajectory, so it intersects the ordinary trajectory and then goes past the incumbent. That's the normal disruptive innovation. But there is another disruptive innovation which is don't stay in that plane, change the plane, go onto another plane where the conventional competition is not able to follow you. And that's what we are doing with TameFlow. We are clearly doing all the things that Agile, Scrum, Safe, Kanban are doing, but they don't have this financial flow dimension. And not only don't they have the financial perspective, as we were saying before, but they don't have the financial throughput perspective, which is even more important because that means that operationally you must be able to identify the constraint, and they can't do that. So far, TameFlow is the only approach that is capable of finding the constraints in knowledge work. So there are quite a few things that would need to happen for them to compete. Scrum would have to throw away sprints. They can't do that. Kanban would have to throw away column width limits. They would look very funny if they did so. I don't think that will ever happen. So they will not be able to do step one, identify the constraint. Without identifying the constraint, we cannot apply all the financial throughput thinking that we are promoting. So even if this seems like a challenge, even if it's hard, stick to your guns. It's gonna be worth it because we are preparing like exceptional change capabilities that we will be offering the market. Let's look at some more comments. Where was I? This one maybe. Why is TA not more accepted given it has been around since the mid-90s? There are two reasons. One I mentioned before, that Goldratt made enemies in the accountancy field. But I don't think that is the main reason. The main reason is that the notion of of throughput rate is known in the accountancy field, and maybe Daniel Dwaron will correct me, but it is a theoretical notion that you can focus on the best return per scarcest resource. So it's almost exactly the definition we have of throughput rate. But the point is, in the large scheme of things, it has always, from an accounting perspective, so not talking about theory of constraints or Goldratt, so an accountant that doesn't know about theory of constraints and hasn't been stimulated to study it because of that inimical position of Goldratt. For the accounting professional, finding that element of scarcest resource was only a theoretical thing. He could not do it materially. It was impossible. So if you cannot find Herbie, you cannot apply this. And if you look at accountancy as such, without the input of operations, they will never get there. So that's what we're doing here. We are trying to take all the teachings of Goldratt and make them more digestible for the industry at large. Daniel Dwaron has comments. For accountants, profit equal cost cutting. Yes. For throughput accounting, profit equals revenue growth. Exactly. So that's a lesson that needs to be taught to the professional accountants. Doug, isn't that part of the problem, Daniel? They are comfortable with cost accounting because they can control the cuts or the costs. With revenue growth, they feel they have less control and won't take the risk. I don't, of course I would let Daniel, I don't know which Daniel he's referring to, whether it's you or
I think it's Daniel Dwaron, but it brings to mind something I just read in the Choice, actually, Goldratt's last book. In all organizations have developed defense mechanisms around the fact that they're so inefficient, and that leads to lowered expectations all around, even if we're not aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a key point what you just said, and I would additionally stress that it's not just being more comfortable. It's I go back to the root. It's a mental model thing. They have a fixed mental model on cost cutting. Why? Because that has been the only way they had as accountants to contribute value. They didn't have an option. Now we're giving them the option. So it will be interesting to see how this evolves. Daniel Dwaron, span of control is cost cutting. Yes, that's easy to do when you are in control, of course. Revenue growth, sphere of influence, systems thinking. Yeah.
Harder.
So it's mental.
Requires discipline.
Discipline,
hard work.
yes, exactly. Okay, I think we've run way over the time. So I will now leave the last reflections for you. If there is any closing words or thoughts you would like to add, and
no, I mean, this was a very far-reaching conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to get on my soapbox. I never refuse those opportunities.
Yes, I appreciate that you came here as a guest. Your experience, shines through in every word you say, and you said many wise. You gave many wise insights
Thank you.
this evening. So I'm sure you'll be back sometime, and it would be great to have Al Shalloway or Scott Ambler on the show as well.
Yep.
If that's possible at all.
Let's see what we can do.
And extend the family.
There you go.
The agile family that you talked about when you first started off in the industry. Let's make that one come back. Okay. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to you, Daniel Gagnon. We'll be back on this channel soon again.
All
Goodbye.
right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Good evening. Bye bye.